I really feel like I need to say something about this past election, and I'm not going to get carried away on it. I'll tell you something Mark Twain said before I say anything about that. Mark Twain said politicians and diapers are a lot alike. They need to be changed very often, and for the same reason. Well, you all know, I mean, our nation has been put to the test before, and we've survived. And I believe in my heart of hearts we'll survive this, because I believe our institutions are strong. But you and I are also going to be put to the test. And in times like these, I wrote an article, and I don't know if it got in the Tryon Times or not, but in this article I quoted Martin Luther King, because the word fight is being used by both sides of our parties, fight. If you look that word up in the dictionary, the first word you'll see in that definition is violence. If you look the word fight up, you'll find the definition includes the word violence. So things could get violent. I think things could have gotten violent if the election had gone the other way as well. There would have been violence. So, you know, I think in times like these, we need to call on our great leaders, the great leaders of our country. And when I think of the great leaders of our country, I think of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, there are many. But one of the greatest spiritual leaders of our country was Martin Luther King, Jr. And I was looking up quotes of his to include in my article. The first quote I came across is the one that I really needed to hear. And it was this. It said, "Don't let a man take you so low as to hate him." Don't let a man take you so low as to hate him. Because hate, as a friend of mine used to tell me, hate is like drinking poison and wishing the other person would die. And it's hard not to hate. It's hard not to be angry. And I think that's why we read through King's letters and even through history that love is a labor, love is hard, love is a work. It takes a lot of energy and strength. If you're interested in Martin Luther King's sermons on that, he wrote a book with his sermons included, and it's called Strength to Love. And so he called his people in the civil rights movement not to respond with violence and not to fall into hate. The opposite of faith is not, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. The opposite of love is fear. So perfect love casts out fear, but if you turn that around, it works too. Perfect fear casts out love. And we need to understand love is not some sentiment. It's not feeling good. It's not having warm, fuzzy feelings toward anybody. It's a power that rises us above fear. Because when we act out of fear, we do things that are not very wise. Most of y'all know the Roosevelt quote, right? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. So I hope that we respond as Unitarian Universalists with that kind of love, and that we don't fall into the grips of fear and hate and this whole thing. Anyway, that's my little speech. Let me open our words with this reading. Let me open our service with this reading. We come to this time and this place to rediscover the wondrous gifts of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flames of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. Our opening hymn is number 67.
Good morning.
Good morning.
most luxurious possession, the richest treasure anybody has, is his personal dignity. That was Jackie Robinson, the baseball player. When there is oppression and dictatorship, by not speaking out, we lose our dignity. And my last one, dignity demands a mutuality of respect. We have a claim to our own self-worth by the very humanity we share with one another.
Thank you. Join with me, please. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you. Where'd my singer go?
Paying my dues. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say it's alright. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
It's reading from Kabir. And the title is This Clay Jug. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains.
All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars.
The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels.
And music from the streams no one touches, and the source of all water.
If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth.
Friend, listen, the God whom I love is inside.
Amen. Amen. The God whom I love is inside. Hold on to that. The God that I love is inside. Remind me of a teaching that I heard once. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. okie dokie. I remember telling a Methodist colleague of mine that I was not good at math because I didn't like numbers. And he said, well, why don't you try not telling yourself that? Why don't you try telling yourself something else, like, I can do math and I'm good at numbers. Well, I tried that for a while. And it just didn't work. I have an awful time with numbers. They just don't register up here. And I think it goes back to an incident that occurred when I was in the 5th grade. I failed the 5th grade. Because, for one, I was labeled in the 3rd grade as a daydreamer. I had ADD. I was another daydreamer. And my teacher said that his problem is that he daydreams a lot. Well, I didn't do my homework. I hated doing homework. And our teacher had assigned us some division problems, and I just didn't do them. But to my surprise, the next day in class, she said, I'm going to call on you to come up to the board and work out your division problems so we can all see how you do it. Well, I stood up there in front of my division problem on the board and stared at it. One by one, all the other students did theirs and they sat down, but she left me standing up there. And she left me standing up there. And I started to cry. And I started to heave, crying. And then she finally said, sit down, stupid, you're never going to learn math. She was probably frustrated with me, so why she probably said it the way she did. But it hurt and it went deep. But it was a humiliating experience for me, and as a consequence of that, I never even tried to do math, and I never tried to do numbers. And so I was taking basic math in my junior year at college. 1 + 1 is 2. No, not that bad, but and still today, numbers don't. I have a hard time with that. That was a traumatic experience for me, and you all know, some of you probably had that experience before, where something is sort of given to you at a young age and you just can't shake it, And if you heard Jim's sermon about his growing up, you remember him saying how he was told he was going to go to hell for these things and how hard it was, difficult for him to shake that, When you're told something as a child, it's almost as if it makes an imprint, Well, I want you to think for a moment of the childhood of Western civilization. And so go back into time, back into the medieval period, the beginnings of the birth of Western culture, out of Rome and over into Europe and so forth and so on to over here. And I want you to think about that childhood of our culture and what we were told, what our ancestors were told. And I'm going to quote to you from the father of Western Christianity, St. Augustine. And this is what he told the children of Western culture. Every human who comes into being by natural birth is bound by original sin. Their soul degraded. Their moral facilities befuddled. And their will to do good corrupt. The result of the darkness of lust. So imagine telling your children that over and over and over again. Imagine telling your children that when they're little teeny toddlers and you're corrupt. You're degraded and you're corrupt. So the father of Western civilization, they laid that on the children that became us, you and me. And it was passed on through other theologians, for example, John Calvin. And this is what Calvin told the children. All men, as a consequence of the fall, are born corrupt, enslaved to sin and enmity with God, and unable to please Him or even of themselves to turn to Christ for salvation. You're told that over and over and over and over and over as you grow up. I mean, what kind of effect is that going to have on the founders of Western civilization and culture? What's that going to do to us? So, if you think that a human being, if you believe in your heart of hearts that a human being is, what you're looking at is a corrupt being, a corrupt, depraved being, then there's all sorts of things you can do to them without conscience, you know. I look at you and see that you're a worthless, corrupt being, then there's no end to what I might be able to do to you. Because you're almost subhuman, you know. When I was in training at Parris Island, a boot camp with Marines, thinking I was going to Vietnam, we sang chants of killing gooks and spilling gook blood. So we weren't going to kill humans. We were going to put these gooks out of their misery. So during the Inquisition, the belief by the institutional church was you put these degraded humans out of their misery and you can save their soul. And I won't go into it in detail, but the devices of torture invented during that period were unimaginable. You can torture a human without conscience if you believe they're dogs, or they're degraded, they're corrupt. And so you have this whole period known as the Inquisition, where thousands and thousands of innocent people lost their lives. And the belief was that we're helping them out, you know, by sending them on, you know, saving their souls. And what I want you to understand about our principle, our first UU principle, is how difficult and long the struggle was to get where we got, in order to say our first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person, not the inherent corruption or degradation, but the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, and how that transformed and is transforming, I hope, our way of thinking about who we are, and getting past this notion that we're somehow degraded, corrupt beings, that we need salvation. Jesus never once mentions the fall. Jesus never mentions Adam and Eve, the fall. Jesus never mentions original sin in any of his Sermon on the Mount. He doesn't mention anything about humans being corrupt or depraved. And his greatest teaching is, you are the light. You are the light. You carry within you the divinity, the divine. You're a carrier of that light. And that light is the power you live by, your life, you know. You have that light within you to guide you through life. And then, you know, Jesus goes on to say, don't hide it. Don't hide it. I love that parable that he also tells about the talents. You know, the 3 men are given talents, and the one goes and invests his talent. The second one invests his talent. The third one buries his talent, and he says, because I was afraid. You know, Nelson Mandela said that we're afraid of our own power. We really are. We're afraid of it. So we want to hand it over to somebody else to take care of it, you know, and tell us what to do, because we're afraid of our own light. You know, it seems funny to me that if we are so corrupt and depraved as we are, what would be the point of telling us, of teaching us that we're the light? If we're so depraved and corrupt at birth, unable to do anything good, what would be the point of teaching us to love God, to love our neighbor as ourselves? What would be the point in teaching us that? There'd be no point in it. You know, you'd say, well, it'd be like trying to teach a worm how to fly. And I call that worm theology, by the way. That's worm theology. Any theology that puts you down and degrades you as a human being is what I call worm theology. And I heard worm theology at my brother-in-law's funeral years and years ago, when the minister stood up and said he died because he was a sinner. And I said, well, I would stand up and say, okay, where'd you get that worm theology? You know? So we've come a long way to be able to embrace that principle and say the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But let me tell you now, though, that principle is ineffective if it doesn't start with you. If you can't say to yourself, I am a person of worth and dignity and self-respect, and I'm going to hold fast to that, you know. I'm a person of dignity, I'm a person of respect, and a person of worth. And you know, if you feel that way about yourself, there are just certain ways you won't behave. If you truly feel that way about yourself. And I'll be honest with you, it's taken me a long time to get to that point where I feel that about myself as a human being. And that I will respect myself, but I will also respect others as best I can. You know? And that's one of the things I think that we're really struggling with in this country right now, is the restoration of a sense of the dignity and the worth of who we are as Americans, and treating each other with civility. And, you know, I won't get too deeply into this, but we've seen such incivility. I mean, it's just to the point where it's unimaginable in our culture. And I hope it doesn't become the norm, you know, that we call each other names, we degrade each other, we make fun of each other, but we don't go there, you know. Because we don't go there because we really do feel that we're persons of worth and dignity. That struggle to restore that sense of worth and dignity began really in the Renaissance. And I'm going to quote you. I hate reading quotes, but there's a quote. There's two quotes I'm going to read you. And the first one is is a reference to the Renaissance movement. The Renaissance strove for a religion of affirmation. I affirm you. Of the world and the intellect, a religion which conceded to both their specific value and which found the real proof of divinity not in the degradation and destruction of the world and of humanity, but in their exaltation. The real seal and proof of the divinity was not in the degradation of humanity, but in the exaltation of humanity. I mean, go back to the teachings of Jesus. They lift us up. They don't put us down. That's the good news. That's the gospel. You are a person of profound worth and dignity. You carry within you the light. You carry, whatever you want to call it, you carry within you the image of God. If you're over in India, you say you carry within you the Atman. I mean, it goes by many different names. And that is the basis of what became humanism. Humanism is fundamentally the valuing humans and human values. I mean, that to me is the basis of humanism. We put a value on humanity, on being human. On through the Enlightenment, from the Renaissance, we're moving on through. Now, the only thing about the Renaissance period is you had to be real careful what you said, because you could be persecuted for saying the wrong things. But not so with the Enlightenment. By the time we get to the Enlightenment, the church has lost all its authority to persecute people and to torture and kill them. So here's what this book, here's this quote about the Enlightenment. The various fields of knowledge, natural science, law, politics, withdraw from the domination and tutelage of the church. In this change of position, theology rejects the dogma of original sin. The rejection of this dogma is the typical indication of the basic direction of the theology of the Enlightenment. These advocates of the new theology all consider the idea of original sin, which is visited upon succeeding generations, as absolutely absurd, as an insult to the first laws of ethics. Now, I'm going to put it this way, and I don't have to worry about being tortured and burned at the stake, so I can say it this way. The doctrine of original sin is psychologically the most destructive dogma that has ever been created by the warped mind of a few men. I'm going to say it again. The dogma of original sin is psychologically the most destructive dogma that's ever been created by the warped mind of a few men. And it's still alive and well. So our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You know, that we have to think about that in terms of everyone. You know, when I was up in the Bavard church, we talked about our first principle one time, and somebody said they couldn't possibly apply that to Adolf Hitler. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Not some people, but every person. That's a challenge. The key word is inherent in that passage. The inherent. The key word is inherent. And I kept thinking of a way that I might illustrate what that means, inherent. If you look it up in the dictionary, the etymology of the word, it just goes back to the word natural. the natural worth and dignity. And you can trace that idea of worth and dignity and the inherent worth of every human being by nature. You can trace that from the Enlightenment all the way through to the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The inherent worth and dignity. So I kept thinking of how I might use an analogy for that. I was thinking, okay, if I invented a tool for farming, I invented a plow to plow and a pruning hook to prune with, but then someone comes along and turns those tools into weapons for war, then those tools have lost their inherent value, their natural value. They've been used for something destructive rather than farming to grow food for hungry people. And so to me, that notion of inherent, it's natural. We're naturally that way. But that doesn't mean we may not lose that nature along the way because of the forces of society and the corruption of oftentimes of society upon us. So we have that inherent natural worth and dignity, and we may lose that, but we may find it again. We may restore it, but we have to work on that. And I'm back to my friend telling me, why do you keep telling yourself over and over and over again that you're not good at this? Why don't you start telling yourself something different? So this principle gives us that challenge, to say to ourselves, to look in the mirror every morning and say, you are a person of worth and dignity and self-respect. And as a consequence of that, you will treat others that way. Thank you. Now we're going to sing. Rob, come on. We're going to sing. Rob will sing "Stand by Me."
Okay. Not that one. When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, now stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as
questions or comments or opposing viewpoints, we'll open the floor for those. The blessing of truth be upon us, power of love direct and sustain us, and may the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Now, does anyone have anything they'd like to say or take issue with? Any comments? Jerry, and then Jim.
Jerry? In the 3rd grade, I learned I am dumb as a post. It's straightforward, that's the way it is. And I suffered through that all of grade school, high school, and the very last class I had in high school was an architectural drawing class. And I started working on something, and I said, finally, I found it. My whole educational purpose for me appears to be a waste. But the very last class in high school, I discovered what it is that my interest is, and it was an architectural drawing class. And I missed being on the drawing board a lot, but through all of that, I still got a degree in architectural engineering and had worked in an architectural environment most of my life. But I didn't know it until the last days of high school, that finally there was something I saw that I could do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, for sharing that. Jim had his hand up, Nick, right here.
I'm just curious what the implications are. You say that we can lose the inherent worth and dignity. So how does that affect our, well, case in point, I would say that Donald Trump has lost his inherent worth and dignity. How does that affect how we relate to him? Does that give us a carte blanche to put him down, to treat him as if he has no worth? Or
Good question.
I struggle, I really, if I had to say it right now, I'd say I hate Donald Trump. And one of the reasons I hate him is because he makes me feel that way. Well, he doesn't make me feel that way, but I feel that way. Anyway, I struggle with it, and then I think maybe you've given me an out.
You know, but I mean, to me, you can't reach that place of love, of worth and dignity if you don't go through the wilderness, if you don't acknowledge the feelings of hatred, the feelings of anger. You go, you know, there's this, and I won't carry on. There's one night when Martin Luther King is in his kitchen, he's at the kitchen table, and fear has gripped him so much that he's about to fall apart. He's so afraid he's going to get killed, his family's going to get killed. He's in the depths of that fear. And it's a process. He moves out of that fear slowly and brings himself to the point where he realizes, I'm going to love, I don't care what happens. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to hate. But you have to go through that. You know, we think we can detour around that and deny it and be dishonest with ourselves. Oh no, I don't hate him. When we really do feel those feelings. And I think to get to that place, you've got to go through that wilderness. You've got to go through that darkness to get to the light. And I I say we need to love Donald Trump, but I don't mean to have warm fuzzy feelings about it. We recognize our hatred, but we're not going to respond to what he or MAGA people do out of anger and hatred and fear. We're going to respond to them with compassion, and they're going to see how strong we really are. And that's what Martin Luther King is. Love is a power. It's the most powerful force in the universe. And it'll defeat this wickedness or whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry to carry on. If you ask the preacher a question, he goes on further.
Well, I hate to quote Paul, but Paul said, "Be angry, but do not sin." So we can have those feelings without acting upon them.
Yeah, exactly. I can't deny that I don't feel that, but I know that I don't want to stay in that. I want to get to the point where I can love this person and not be afraid, because my fear and hatred of them blinds me totally to possibilities. Okay, enough said. Stop.
You've ever heard of tough love? No. Telling them what you think is important. And hiding and hoping that things will be better is not enough.
No.
So, write to them. Call the White House, tell them what you think.
Well, I was up at a donation place in Asheville the other day, and I saw some guys, and they were Trumpers, you could tell, and I said, I'm not going to be afraid of these guys. I'm going to walk up here, I'm going to talk to them, rather than going on, those are Trumpers over there. I'm not bragging about myself, but, and I've got to approach this situation not out of fear. I'm sorry, carried away again.
I volunteered with the Polk DNC and did my part to try. But the state DNC had what was supposed to be a Zoom meeting, but they had so many people, so many Democrats who participated on Thursday night, that it became more of a chat and a presentation. And one of the things that I got from that is that, yes, we are all grieving, hating, angry, but it was so encouraging to me because most of these, well, the ones who were leading this conversation were young people, millennials. And I thought, and they have a plan to turn our anger into action and for us to get involved. And the other thing, I know we don't all live in North Carolina who are here, but I shared this at our women's group meeting. North Carolina is second only to Wisconsin in voting a higher number of Democrats into open office seats. And so there is stuff that we can do. I mean, we have to look at the fact that we have a governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, commissioner of public instruction, and a legislator. Oh, did I say attorney general? Okay. Well, but anyway, it's something for us to build on. And we do have to act. And I agree with Alan. We don't have to accept this. And we don't have to love the behavior. To love our country and where we want to see it go. For me,